Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this cold evening in Cleveland, Ohio, but it's very warm in here, and it's great to see so many familiar faces. For those that I don't know, I hope I meet you, but I'm fortunate to be the President CEO of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. My name is Greg Harris, and I love that we have this crowd here, and I love that you're here for John Prine, you're here for Holly Gleason, you're here for LYLE Lovett. What an amazing, amazing thing, and you're here for Fiona Prine. Let's hear it. Now, we want you to come back next Friday for the Ohio City Singers as well. They're incredible. Please come back, okay? I can't resist sharing well, before I do that, I want to recognize two other people that are here that I'm honored are with us. And it's two of our state representatives. One is a senator and one is a representative. And one is a Republican and one is a Democrat, but they're sitting with each other. And they both love the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They both love music, and they're both helping us with a lot of things in Columbus, including with an expansion project we're doing. But please join me in thanking them for their work. And also, they show that there are really good people and they can get stuff done. And it's Senator Kent Smith and Representative Jamie Callender. And they know their music, by the way, in a very good way. So quickly, my John Prine story that I can't resist sharing with this crowd because I think you've all spent a lot of time with this music. I hope you spend a lot of time with Holly's book. It's very terrific. Back in junior high school, a really good friend, Dennis Brennan, it was the house in the neighborhood where they had 8 kids and you could always sleep there. And I think I slept at the Brennan house more than at my own. And Dennis visited his brother, Jack, who was living at the time and working as an electrician in Austin. And he got to go to Austin City Limits and see John Prine. And we didn't know who he was. And when Dennis came back, he had a record album that his brother bought for him. And it was that great record where he's lounged in the front seat of a convertible. And we put on, Dear Abby and Grandpa was a carpenter and all of that stuff. We lost Dennis Brennan about 20 years ago. And whenever I think of John Prine, I think of Dennis Brennan, I think of those songs. And we're all connected because of that. That's why you're here. And that's why we care about this place so much and we care about music so much. I've had the pleasure of reading Holly's book. I highly recommend it. It'll take you back because it's a collection of interviews. And you're going to find some that you read. And you're going to start reading and go, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. And it's going to take you back to a spot. And I was fortunate to do that with an interview that he did in Hot Rod Magazine, because back then I was building cars and that was a real Bible. And I thought he must be a great guy if he's in Hot Rod Magazine and he can write songs like Dear Abby. And you're going to hear from those that spent so much time with him later tonight. So thank you all for being here. I'm honored, and we're delighted to have kicking off our program is Andy Leach, who's our Senior Director of Library and Museum Collections and a hell of a pedal steel guitar player. Andy Leach.
Thanks, Greg. I might be overrated as a pedal steel player, but that's very nice to hear. So good evening, everybody. And as Greg said, I'm Andy Leach, and I oversee the collections here at the Rock Hall. Thank you all for being here tonight. We're so excited that you're all here tonight to celebrate one of the greatest songwriters of all time, John Prine. And we're also, of course, celebrating the release of this wonderful book, Prine on Prine, Interviews and Encounters with John Prine, which was edited by our great friend, Holly Gleason, who's here with us. And Holly was a longtime friend of John's, and her book contains 5 decades worth of stories about John and conversations with him that she collected from many sources, and it includes his encounters with tons of legendary journalists and other folks like Studs Terkel, Cameron Crowe, Robert Hilburn, and Holly herself, of course. And it also contains the very last in-depth interview that John ever gave. So it's a truly essential resource about John Prine, and we're so happy that Holly has put it together and that she's here with us tonight to talk about it. We're also so fortunate to have with us FIONA WHELAN PRINE, who was John's wife, of course, and we also have another longtime friend, of John's, and that is the fabulous Lyle Lovett. And before I bring them out, I'm also proud to say that we have just today opened a brand new big display within our Legends of Rock exhibit, about one floor straight up from where we are, in our Legends of Rock exhibit, with a focus on John Prine and his music and his life. So I hope you were able, thank you, yeah. And you haven't even seen it yet, that's great. So if you didn't get a chance, did anyone get a chance to see it already? Okay, great, you good? Thank you. So if you didn't, you should have a chance to do that afterward. There might be a little bit of time either during or after the book signing. So please do that. The display, just so you know, I think we have some images here, includes a couple of guitars that he played throughout his career, clothing he wore, including his Army uniform from the 60s. Some of his greatest songs in handwritten lyrics, a lot of awards he won, but also belongings that he kept with him and brought with him on the road, and including some that were at his last show in Paris in 2020. So please check it out. If you don't see it tonight, though, it'll be up, throughout next year. So see it whenever you can. I want to say we put that display together with the help of John's family and the team at Oh Boy Records in Nashville, and we owe them a lot, so I want to thank them for helping with that. So with that, I guess without further delay, before I bring out our special guests, we're going to start things off with an incredible performance that John Prine did for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame during our 1997 American Music Masters show. That was a tribute to Jimmy Rogers. Were any of you at that show? Wow, that's great. All right, well, this is, I think, a great way to kick things off. So I think we are going to start it with that.
Standing by peaceful water, standing by peaceful water. Whoa, wow, wow. Whoa, wow, wow. Many years ago, along the Illinois-Wisconsin border, there was this Indian tribe. They found two babies in the woods, white babies. One of them was named Elizabeth. She was the fairer of the two, while the smaller and more fragile one was named Marie. Having never seen white girls before, and living on the two lakes known as the Twin Lakes, they named the larger and more beautiful lake, Lake Elizabeth. And thus the smaller lake that was hidden from the highway became known forever as Lake Marie. We were standing by peaceful waters, standing by peaceful waters. Whoa, wow, whoa, wow. Whoa, wow, wow. Many years later, I found myself talking to this girl who was standing there with her back turned to Lake Marie. The wind was blowing, especially through her hair. There was 4 Italian sausages cooking on the outdoor grill. And man, they were sizzling. Many years later, we found ourselves up in Canada trying to save our marriage and perhaps catch a few fish. Whatever seemed easier. That night she fell asleep in my arms, humming the tune to Louie Louie. Oh, baby, we gotta go now. We were standing by peaceful waters, standing by peaceful waters. Whoa, wow, wow. Whoa, wow, wow. Whoa, wow, wow. The dogs were barking as the cars were parking. The loan sharks were sharking and the narcs were narking. Practically everyone was there. In the parking lot by the Forest Preserve, the police have found 2 bodies in the woods. Naked bodies. And their faces had been horribly disfigured by some sharp object. I saw it on the news, on the TV news, in a black and white video. You know what blood looks like in a black and white video, don't you? Shadows. Shadows! That's exactly what it looks like. All the love that we shared between her and me, it was slammed up against the banks of old Lake Marie. Just standing by peaceful waters. Standing by peaceful life. Ah, baby, we gotta go now. Songwriters.
Man, how about that? What a great song. That was actually on the Lost Dogs and Mixed Blessings album. That was the first Prine record I ever bought, and I had just started in a band, and we listened to the hell out of that record. So I'm glad that Fiona chose that one for tonight. So now I'm pleased and honored to introduce Holly Gleason to the stage. Holly is a music critic, academic, and artist development consultant. Her writing has appeared in Rolling Stone, the LA Times, the New York Times, Miami Herald, and many more publications. She's the 2023 Southern California Media Arts Entertainment Journalist of the Year. She's a 2019 Country Music Association Media Achievement Award recipient and a Western Reserve Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Fellow. Holly created and contributed to another great book that we promoted here several years ago called Woman Walk the Line, How Women of Country Music Changed Our Lives, which was a 2019 Belmont Book Award winner. And just this year, she also co-authored Miranda Lambert's cookbook, Y'all Eat Yet? Welcome to the Pretty Bitchin' Kitchen. In your bio, the bitchin' isn't in the bio, but I think we're at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We can say bitchin' here. Most recently, of course, she curated and contributed to Prine on Prine, interviews and encounters with John Prine. She lives in Nashville, Tennessee. Incidentally, though, she grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, 4 houses down from where I live right now. It's true, right on the same street. What I want to say, too, is she has enjoyed a long-standing relationship with John Prine, as well as his longtime co-manager, and she often traveled with him on tours in the late 80s and represented him in the 2000s. We're honored to have her here. Welcome to the stage, Holly Gleason.
Hi. We really appreciate you being here. John Prine meant so much to so many people, and he kind of changed my life, which is why this book exists. There's so many things I could say about why the guests for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but beyond how much John loved people and loved rock and roll, he loved songwriters. So we're going to show a clip from 1987 in Dublin, Ireland. There was a show that they put together 5 nights. American artists, Irish artists, British artists, and 1 German artist. And you can understand what John really thought of Lyle by this next clip.
Thank you. Well, I do request, but I have to do them in a pub later because we're going to run them in the order the cameras look at them. I don't know which pub, though. I like writing songs an awful lot. I used to do it as a hobby when I was growing up. It was always easier for me to write a song or make one up, as I used to call it, rather than to learn somebody else's song as much as I liked other people's songs. And one thing I like better than writing songs is hearing a new songwriter come along that I really admire a whole lot. And this fella that's going to come out here now and is the best one I've heard come down the pike in a long time. From Klein, Texas, would you please welcome LYLE LOVETT.
All right, well, it's my honor, and I'm thrilled to introduce to the stage LYLE LOVETT, who is a 4-time Grammy Award-winning singer, composer, and actor who has broadened the definition of American music in a career that has spanned 14 albums, including his latest, which is called The 12th of June. Along with his gift for storytelling and songwriting, his music really showcases his ability to fuse elements of jazz, country, western swing, folk, gospel, and blues in a way that defies convention and breaks down barriers. Since his self-titled debut in 1986, Lyle has evolved into one of the most vibrant and iconic performers in music today. In addition to the 4 Grammys I mentioned, he was given the Americana Music Association's inaugural Trailblazer Award. He was named a Texas State Musician, and he's a member of both the Texas Heritage Songwriters Association Hall of Fame and the Texas Cowboy Hall of Fame. Please join me in giving a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame welcome to the great Lyle Lovett.
Thank y'all.
And I'm also so honored to introduce Fiona Whelan Prine. She is the president of Oh Boy Records, which was co-founded in 1981 by John Prine. It's the country's second oldest independent record label. It's still in operation. In her role at Oh Boy Records, Fiona oversees the multiple Grammy Award-winning recordings and publishing copyrights of her late husband, John Prine. She also serves as founder and president of the Hello in There Foundation and is a proud member of the National Council on the Arts, as well as music organizations, including the Americana Music Association and the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. She was born and raised in Ireland, and she served as the business manager for Windmill Lane Studios in Dublin, which is considered Ireland's premier recording studio. Fiona and John met while working there with artists like U2, Van Morrison, and many others. And later, they got married in Nashville, Tennessee, where they together raised their 3 sons. We're so thrilled to have with us Fiona Whelan Prine.
So this afternoon they told us we're sold out. This is the first time since COVID this entire theater has been filled. So thank you. Thank you for honoring John this way. There's so much that could be said. I'm gonna have one little tiny reading from the book and then we're gonna talk. It's from, ironically, Studs Terkel's, no, not Studs Terkel, it's from Roger Ebert, went to a movie, hated it so much he walked out, needed a beer, and went to see what was happening at a local bar. So you talk to him, and you find out that Prine has been carrying mail in Westchester since he got out of the Army 3 years ago, that he was born in Maywood, and that his parents come from Paradise, Kentucky, that his grandfather was a miner, a part-time preacher, and used to play guitar with Merle Travis and Ike Everly, the Everly brothers' father, and that his brother Dave plays banjo, guitar, and fiddle, and got John started on the guitar about 10 years ago. John has been writing songs just as long, and these days he works on new ones while delivering his mail. That's a pretty good place to begin. So, the book traces John's life through the media and other places, but my friends, they've lived the life with him. And when I look at both of you and I think about how much he loved you, it makes me smile. Let's start with a really basic question. Fiona, do you have a favorite memory or a favorite moment?
Well, thank you for asking me to come here. It's wonderful to be with you both. You know, that video that you just saw where he was introducing you, that's the night I met John. in that awful blue jacket and pink tie. It took about 10 years, but we did get rid of it finally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously that night rings true and loud in my head and will forever.
Yeah, it was a special night. And that was part of why I wanted to put the band back together. And Lyle, when you came over to Dublin to do the sessions, you were so ascendant. What did you think when you were over making all that music with all those writers?
Oh goodness! The session, and that was 1989, wasn't it, Holly? Or was it 88?
I think it was 88.
It was 88.
Because Dan and I were breaking up.
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving,
1988, and
a very foggy Dublin.
It was the peat fog, wasn't it?
Smog.
Was it?
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't see. But the Bloom's Hotel where we all stayed was nice enough to have turkey and sort of dressing for us. It was a great attempt, and we all felt, very well looked after, all of us. And it was just such an amazing event. And then to be there with John. Anytime I'd done shows on the road with John by then. I'd met lots of people through John, like Philip Donnelly, and gosh, I had met Jim Rooney on one of my first trips to Nashville. So I felt like I knew John better than I probably did. But it was because John Prine was always gracious. He, and not just for me, but anybody who was ever in his presence. I mean, he made you feel like you belonged with him. And that's the very first time I met John, you just got that right away. He just wanted you to be comfortable, wanted you to be there, wanted you to feel okay being there with him. Does that
That's perfect.
make sense?
Oh yeah, that sounds. John had a great way of being present in the moment, which sometimes could be annoying. If you were trying to plan things or whatever. But it was a real gift, and I think that's what we felt when we were in his presence.
It is truly a gift. We all have different qualities. People are not equal. People are not the same. We all we all excel in different areas, and John Prine's humanity was just off the charts.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I always found fascinating back in those days was how he was so seeking in his writing and so specific and so evocative. And one of the things I think he responded to with you was that as well. Did you pull anything out of the way John wrote?
Oh gosh, well I bought that first album when I was in high school, and the imagery, what struck me the most though, besides the poetry, was how musical his songs were, how melodic, how his songs sort of carried you away. You just get lost in listening to a song like Sam Stone. You were right there with him, and John has had one of those great voices in his writing that it was hard to, you just felt like he was the characters he was writing about. There was such an authenticity to his writing, which is just the way he was. John Prine was just, authentic. He was who he was always. But yes, the imagery, the narrative quality in his songs. Those weren't like the pop songs you were hearing on the radio. Listening to John Prine made me think, gosh, a song can be about something.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. And you do that too. And one of the other things about John, and you can both speak to this, was the fellowship. He was always fostering fellowship.
Yeah, I think, it's lovely to hear that intro that he did for introduce you to Ireland, I guess, in some respects,
right,
to that audience. It was, of course, admiration for people that were doing the same thing that he was doing, but I think there was also affirmation for him that there were people doing what he was doing. Because John was really humble and really had no idea where the songs came from. He would say that over and over. And I would tell you, really, that sometimes it was hard to see where John began and ended and the songs began and ended and that little infinity loop, He was his songs. He's in every song.
And he would build communities. That's, I think about you and Iris DeMent, She was part of that era. And then came the Broken Hearts and Dirty Windows tribute records, the first one with My Morning Jacket. And then I look at what he's done with the Americana artists. And I'm gonna brag a little. Tomorrow night, Tommy Prine, John and Fiona's son, is gonna make his debut at the Grand Ole Opry. And he loved the Opry.
Oh yeah, John absolutely loved the Opry. Yeah, had great reverence. John had great reverence for all the institutions around music. You know, everything from the Musicians Union to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Opry. Yeah, they were. He saw that as part of the structure of his job.
Absolutely, and also I think part of the honor, like he recognized all these different organizations, the Opry, the Rock Hall, as a place where they enshrine things that matter. It was a very big piece of it, that respect. If you go, and I recommend go up and see the artifacts. We all went earlier, and it was very moving. His Austin City Limits Hall of Fame, what do we call that piece of art, trophy?
It's a piece of art, trophy.
Yeah, kind of. It's
Yeah.
hard. You'll see it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Sometimes the trophies are they look maybe a little less significant than the actual award.
right.
Yeah. But that was a huge honor for us as his family. That he was
Absolutely.
inducted. Yeah.
And part of that is there's that singer-songwriter tradition. John is, maybe Nancy Griffith has one more, but John is the most Austin City Limits appearances of any artist outside of Texas.
Other than Willie. I think Willie's number one. Maybe.
I think Nancy.
And then I think Lyle is probably ties for number one. Is that
No, Willie's number one. Yeah.
We bow to
No
the
fact
Texan.
checking. We're just talking.
You're in our living room. But that Austin City Limits was for a guy from Chicago who'd go down to Kentucky with his parents on the weekends. That was ride or die. And it was funny because I don't think I understood until I went with John the first time what a big deal Austin City Limits is. Did you ever go see any of the tapings before you sang with Nancy?
You know, I used to. That's really how I think I got to be on the show. I hung out there a lot, and my friend Nancy Griffith's boyfriend at the time, whose name is Wayne Miller, who executive produced.
I didn't know that.
You know, / paid for the recordings that Nancy first did with Jim Rooney that turned into Once in a Very Blue Moon. Grew up in Galveston with Gary Minotti, the director of Austin City Limits. And so Wayne was a film and television major at the university there, and was working for Third Coast Productions in those days, making music videos
Right.
so we would just go. Wayne was pals with those guys, and we'd go, and so I watched so many Austin City. That's why I was so petrified my very first time on the show, because I knew the trash those guys were talking in the control room. And I could just hear it in my head. But yeah,
They'd heard it all before.
That's right. I got to go to a George Jones Austin City Limits taping. I was so proud to be a part of this moment, because it was an actual no-show George Jones performance. He did not come, and he was paired with Whitey Schaefer, and Whitey Schaefer ended up doing 2 sets instead.
Wow.
But I thought, well, I've experienced, one of the great things that you can do in country music.
That is country music history in the making. Were you ever there when John did Austin City Limits?
I wish I had been.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. When we think about troubadours and we think about Austin City Limits, we think about country music, but the truth is, John, and you saw it on Lake Marie, John rocked. He may have had an acoustic guitar on, but he bashed. And he had a lot of fun with it, and I think he believed, and he loved country music so very much, but he believed that, you know, it wasn't necessarily what you were holding, it was what was in your heart. And it's all music. You do it with swing and jazz, and, you know, you bring it all in. Is there something about John that stands out for you, the freedom that he finds in music?
Yeah, I think that's that kind of hits the nail on the head. I mean, he defied genre until they told him he was the godfather of Americana, which he gladly took that mantle. But yeah, I think he, you know, it was all about the song and getting in the studio, working with a producer that he trusted, and taking whatever direction the song dictated. But yeah, he had rock and roll in his heart, absolutely. Yeah, he was a huge Elvis fan. I mean, it's been recorded many times over, but he would stand in front of the mirror as a kid with that blue, Kentucky blue guitar, with his hair like piled high, and trying to be Elvis.
Can we blame him?
No.
Yeah, I found it fascinating, Holly, in the first interviews that you put together with, you know, the 23-year-old John Prine, you know, being, you know, talking about having, you know, his country music roots, being referred to. I mean, Studs Terkel calling him a country songwriter, and how that was. I never thought of John Prine as a country songwriter, but all of that was part of his influence. All of that. You know, then the great narrative quality in country music, you know, the story about his dad. But also fascinating was to hear him say how he was kind of done writing ballads, you know. And yeah, he did. He loved to rock, didn't he? Yeah.
And it felt authentic. That's the other thing.
Well, John Prine was authentic. Anything he did was authentic. You know, it all came from the right place. That's the difference, isn't it? You know, he just wasn't. There was not a pretentious bone in his body.
That's true.
And everything he did came straight from his heart, and you just wanted more of it.
Yeah, that makes me think of when I met John in the early days, and we started this transatlantic thing over and back. And on one of the trips that he took to Ireland, probably in that first year that we met, we were in a restaurant, and his then manager, Al Bonetta, called. And that was a love affair I fought for years.
You won.
I won. So he hung up the phone and he went, "Jeez, Al," you know. I said, "What was that?" He said, "Larry King wants me to go on CNN to talk about my music and this. I think he was getting ready to do the Missing Years."
Right.
And I said, "Wow, well, let's go. Let's get you packed up." And he goes, "Daniel, I'm not going back." He said, "I'm in Ireland. I'm with you. We're going to Galway. I'm not doing that." I was dumbfounded. But I did learn as time went on that was not an authentic move for John. It didn't feel authentic. And if it didn't feel authentic, he resisted it with everything he had. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. As someone that represented two of the records, yes. But there was also that notion of how much he loved everything, too. Like, he had a very strong sense of right and wrong and yes and no, but he also had this very expansive love of life. Like, what is something, both of you, that John loved that you just were tickled by?
Do you have anything?
Well, I knew Al a little bit as well, and Al was always talking about his cars, you know. But yeah, as Andy mentioned, that that John would be in Hot Rod magazine, that John was so enthusiastic about, something other than music. He clearly loved life, and to see John with his sons, to see what a great dad he was just inspiring.
Yeah, he was a true eccentric.
Yes.
That's what I learned. And a true eccentric is, I mean, it's a real thing. It's somebody who is just who they are, with no apology, no consciousness about it. John never felt like he was being looked at. And I could see it. We go to restaurants, and it was like, it was like, I used to call him Mr. Oblivious. He was oblivious to that. So, but the things that he enjoyed were things like Jeopardy.
Right.
And I mean, with a heart for Jeopardy, like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it was, yeah. I still have hundreds of hours recorded on a DVR. But yeah.
Would he have done Jeopardy, you think?
Oh, it's so funny you should say that, because I would sit with him and I would throw some answers out and he'd go, Fee, you should go on. You'd kill it. No, I'm good.
But you know, if you did, no. And the other thing, which has sort of fetishized, is his love of meatloaf. And it used to tickle me because every now and then, evidently, maybe you weren't around, my doorbell would ring and he'd be like, hungry? Hungry?
On a Tuesday.
On a Tuesday. But he'd know, like whatever day it was, you just get in the car and be like, you know we're going for meatloaf. And soul food places, meat and threes. There was a mom and pop place that he liked. I can't think of the name of it.
Not Arnold's? Was it
Not
Arnold's?
Arnold's, was somewhere else. But it was, Arnold's didn't have meatloaf that day.
Oh, Wendell's.
Wendell's, yes. Yeah.
But John did develop a lot more sophisticated palate in later years. In fact, we have some good friends here, Keith and Kathy, and they would testify to that. John definitely enjoyed. He got into sushi and oysters, and yeah, he wasn't just a meat and three guy anymore. He liked the good things.
Yeah. Well, he always sort of had that weird, naughty kid, like, I'm pulling one over.
Very annoying.
When Dan and I started dating, that was always the thing. Like, we'd go to these super fancy restaurants, and he'd give you that little grin, like, can you believe they seated us? And you'd be like, well, yeah, you're John Prine. There's 6 people looking. But he didn't know. When you guys started dating and were across the pond, what was the thing that kept the love alive or kept the spark?
That we loved each other. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I'm not saying that it was simple or it was easy, and there were complications and all kinds of things in between.
I remember
that ocean. But when we met, that minute that we met at Blues Hotel, when he described it as walking around the long side of the bar, I mean, there was an immediate recognition. I immediately knew who he was. I had seen him in concert when I was 17. Yeah. And really everything went over my head then. I was like, it's a bit slow. I remember thinking, who's this funny little guy? He's like, so American.
Which he is.
Which he was. But, you know, I was a 17-year-old Irish girl from Donegal. But that night, as we left early, because, you know, we had other things to do, I stood at the back of the stadium. I don't know if did you ever play the stadium in Dublin? You did? Yeah.
The stadium was a boxing venue, and the dressing rooms, they had, you know, they were decorated with blood on the walls. And they had those metal tables, those kind of gurneys that the boxers would lie on to be wrapped up or carried off. It
was the only venue. I mean, it was the only venue you could seat more than a couple hundred people.
It's a terrific place.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Roy Cooter there. I saw Leonard Cohen. I saw Lou Reed. It was pretty amazing. Anyway, I'd seen John Prine, and as I was leaving, because we had other things to do, I stood at the back and I heard "Sweet Songs Never Last Too Long" on broken radios. And I mean, I was pinned to the wall. Yeah, I'd lost my father just a couple of years before that.
Oh, wow.
And The radio had silenced in our home. We'd moved. A lot of things had happened. And I thought, how does he know? How does he know that? So yeah, I knew him from the time I was 17.
Right. And that's one of his superpowers, is even if he's never met you, he knows you. Did you have a moment like that, Lyle?
Well, just being, John was, you know, insightful. Well, as I said earlier about his making you feel, I remember the first time I opened a show for him was at the Paramount Theater in Austin.
Okay.
John Hagen and I did it together, and it was John and Philip Donnelly. They were out as a duo, just the two of them. It was very powerful, but you know, as the opening act, especially when you're, when you're a genuine fan of whoever you're doing a show with, I mean, it's a bit of an intimidating, you know, I tend to defer to who, you know, the headliner and just try to stay out of the way. But John, you know, John sensed all of that, and, you know, did things to include us, did things to get us out on stage, did things, you know, to make us feel like it was our show too. And I just thought that was incredibly generous. I mean, he unlike your restaurant story, I mean, he was not oblivious to the dynamic, you know, backstage and on stage, and, you know, had John and me out with him and Philip during the show.
Yeah, I don't think John ever made a wrong move as far as his career in terms of who he was, the worker that he was. He valued his fellow musicians. He valued his band. I mean, his road manager Mitchell. I mean, it was a family. You were part of the family. Yeah.
Well, he certainly made us feel that way, and I was fascinating too, reading those early, you know, that once again, I was really curious about the 23-year-old point of view, and to listen to read about his thinking about words. And I mean, his, you know, John Prine didn't just stumble into those songs. He worked at those songs. He thought of, he curated his own good lines and turned them into one song or another song. He you know, the first time I heard "Naked as the Eyes of a Clown," I just thought, well, that's what else do you need? That's the whole world right there in that line. Yep. He was, you know, aware of, you know, what good writing was. And I think, and from, I mean, I always sensed it from being with him. And I mean, he was so self-effacing and so humble. I think you could miss the fact that his work was very deliberate, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, he believed in his songs, 100%. Believed in his characters, believed in their stories, 100%. He was that was never in doubt, ever.
Ever. It's funny because I did the Miami Book Fair with Mike Leonard and Michael McCall, and Mike Leonard from the Today Show told a story about going to see John, maybe in Alabama, and he was asking, you know, whatever happened to the couple in Hello in there? And John didn't miss a beat, and he looked at him, he said, I think Loretta had Alzheimer's. I didn't know that when I wrote it, but the more I play the song and the more I get to know her. And Mike Leonard's like, wow, he's still digging into the songs, right? And he told Jason Wilbur, the guitar player you saw earlier, the story, and he goes, it was amazing because I saw the light go on in Jason's eyes, and it really felt like the solos got sadder that night. And that's
and again, I mean, that's a direct reference to a family member that lived with John and his parents when John was a young boy. His grandmother lived with him, and she developed dementia. And he adored her, but he was fascinated with the idea that she was losing her mind. Just that, and John was very literal, you know. So it was like, where is she going? Where is her mind taking her? So again. Yeah, his life was in all the songs.
Very much so. And you wouldn't know it until you'd start talking to him. And there'd be a line and he'd go, oh no, well, you know, my first job I literally did, I scrubbed a parking lot. On my
He was
hands.
terrified of bees.
Yeah. That's real. And you're like, wow, he's so creative.
But that's, you know, drawing from one's own life, being able to reference one's own experience in the insightful way he does, is what connects all of us as listeners to John Prine. Because John Prine knew what was important in life. You know, the very first line in Paradise, when I was a child, my family would travel. Now, we are all in the car right then. We're all right there with our parents, with that first line. I mean, what a gift that is. That to listen to someone and think, oh my goodness, I'm not alone. He understands how I feel. That's the impact John Prine's songs had.
Absolutely. It's a community, even if it's just you and your radio. You're not alone. And to your point, Lyle, about he was always working and excavating and curating, Fiona, when did you know it was time to pack up the suitcase and send him to the Omni to make the unbelievable Tree of Forgiveness?
Well, because I had never seen him jump through so many hoops and contortions and excuses about he didn't have any songs to write. Because I had seen in the previous months just a lot of legal pads lying around, a lot of notes, and he was, you know, at that time he was really taking stock, I think, of his life. You know, he and I had had a successful marriage. He'd finally done that. That was important to him.
Very important.
Family was really important to him. But he was a musician, and what he did was packed his bags and went on the road. So I said, what about if you go to the Omni, which was then like the fanciest hotel in Nashville, not anymore, but it's still a lovely hotel. And I got him a suite that he loved, and he was more than happy to move in there. He talked about how he looked like Howard Hughes because he had so many bags, and he had a ukulele, and he had a couple of guitars, and I was not there, and he had a ball. He stayed up late, he had dinner at midnight, he slept late. And he spread everything out all around that suite, and he walked out with an album, The Tree of Forgiveness.
He says that you told him not to come home until he had an album.
Well, you know, he was a little prone to exaggeration.
A little.
Yeah.
But it was amazing because, you know, one of the things that he used to say was he had to compete with all the other songs. Like, I've written all these songs, I can't do them all in concert. But at the same point, you recognized that there was an album in there, and The Tree of Forgiveness is such a wonderful record.
Yeah. And he had been writing a lot with Pat McLaughlin, I'm sure you know. He had already written Summer's End.
Right.
And so when the first time I heard that song, I thought he was trying to tell me something bad, or that it was just so immediate and so direct. Of course, what I heard in that song was, you know, the seasons are ebbing. We're coming into the fall, which, you know, he was in his life and his years. But there was just so much there, and I thought, there has to be a record. I mean, if he's writing this, coming home on a Tuesday afternoon with this, there's something going on in here that I think people needed to hear. I really do believe that.
Absolutely. And if you hadn't packed his bags and sent him off, we might have never gotten to hear When I Get to Heaven, or Knocking on Your Screen Door, or Summer's End. It's also an interesting thing, and Lyle, you can speak to the creative process of knowing to trust the songs and to not drive yourself crazy with standards, because you make some pretty impeccable records yourself. Sorry, it was a compliment.
Thank you.
I know you hate that.
No,
That's a little bit of an understatement.
Yeah.
Thank you. No,
I tried to make it gentle.
Thank you. So is it, what's your question, Helen? Right off the bat in the book, Holly talks about how her first interview with John Prine lasted 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
My first interview with Holly Gleason when she was at the Miami Herald was it was a 20-minute, the record company told me, so it's 20-minute phoner.
I see what you're doing here.
And it was not quite 2.5, but it was over 2. I feel I'm a little jealous. But that really is how Holly and I got to be friends. Holly would, you would. I just wish I'd written up our interviews about you.
Wow.
Because Holly's career has been fascinating, and you were really just starting out in those days, weren't you?
I was a baby.
Yeah.
I was a baby. I was a college kid. And I was very serious. You have to admit, I was very serious until I knew you. And then I was annoying. It's true.
Great friends then, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the best. But it was that thing, and another compliment, Duck. You had one of those voices that was so unique, not just this voice, but your word choices and the situations you set up in songs. And I think that was always something that made me want to ask all those questions and then gossip a little, because,
listening to John Prine records, listening to Guy Clark records, listening to Townes Van Zandt records, Willis Allen Ramsey records, Stephen Fromholtz records, the quality that those writers seem to all share was the narrative, showing you the way, not just handing it to you,
right.
but opening the door for you so you could walk inside with them and see what they were showing you. Showing you, not telling you. One of my favorite quotes in the book of John's was in the Roger Ebert piece.
Right.
And I mean, I was not aware of Roger Ebert's that I didn't know about that piece until I saw the book. No, and Roger, I've met Roger Ebert many times. Once again, it made perfect sense why he liked John. I mean, he was a kind and genuine person as well.
Right.
When John says that he wants his audience to get a feeling from his music more than he wants his audience to receive a message.
There you go.
And I just think that's kind of the whole point of music, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or what's good about music. Go ahead and get that.
It's not me, actually. For once, it's not me. But I guess it's that question of creativity, and you opened up a door to another question, sorry, is when those are the standards or that's the inspiration, right? Does that set you free? Does that tell you can do what you want? You can color outside the lines? Was that something John was seeking to do? Because he was such a craftsman, as are you.
Absolutely. It almost said you have to color outside the lines. I guess it just depends on your intention or your objective. I was lucky to come up at a time in Houston where songwriters like Nancy Griffith and Vince Bell and Eric Taylor and Shake Russell were, had been the opening acts when Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt lived in Houston and were playing in Houston. And the ethic, the expectation from the local audience, the people that supported those kind of songwriter clubs, was high. They wanted to hear songs that interested them. They wanted to hear songs that were about something. And listening to John's records, learning to play them, it just made me think those are songs. Other types of music are entertainment, these are songs.
So it's,
That's what I was drawn to.
yeah, so that set the path.
Yeah.
Was it intimidating?
Oh, it was. Yeah, I mean, the idea of making something up that was worth imposing on people. Yeah, sure. To say, hey, listen to this. Yeah, every time.
It takes a certain audacity, doesn't it?
Well, I do think,
way.
I do think, John was such an interesting character because he was, seemed almost shy in a way. I'm not the most outgoing person in a room full of people unless I feel like it's my turn to speak. But just in a room full of people, I think really anyone that ever stands in the middle of a stage and has a white light shown on him is not truly shy. I mean, it wants to be there. But, anybody that does that wants to be there. Once you're there, then that's where the challenge starts. Then what? Then you have to prove that you deserve to be there. John Prine always did that.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And Fiona, to live with that, I mean, it's the tug of war. It's supporting the muse, but it's also, how do you help them manage that amount of all of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, John was as simple a man as we've just described, but he was also one of the most complicated people I've ever met. I'll tell you this, there was really no room for two active creatives in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was hard, because, I mean, I am creative. There's things that I love to do and explore and now do. And not that it was never a problem necessarily, and there was no, I just knew that, right? As somebody, what, you're living married to John Prine and you want to do what? Write a song? Or what? Now, I mean, sometimes we didn't write together, but I would have some input in very small ways. But, yeah.
Like Marie?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell them how you changed the song.
When he said that he'd go to Canada and maybe catch a few fish, and said whatever was easiest, I thought,
Try to save your marriage?
I said, easiest? I mean, who puts easiest in a song? I said, what about whatever comes first? He didn't say anything. Didn't say anything to me, no comment. He just looked at me with those eyes that you never quite knew what was going on behind, those brown eyes. And the next time I heard him sing, it was whatever comes first.
Yeah, which was kind of amazing. And it's also, and again, Lyle, you embody this. It's funny. I mean, you're here because of Dublin. I thought this would be the perfect round table. But you also understand how to be incredibly wrought, right? Some of your songs are just devastating, and you're so damn funny.
Well, that a quality about John. I mean, John's songs are when the song is substantial and about something, his humor shines through. In conversation, he was like this in conversation just as well, right? But he reminded me of my uncles that I grew up with, who would, when you're a little kid, that would say something sort of sideways or clever just to see if you were keeping up. And John's songs have those kinds of references, but in conversation, the same way, that sort of sideways glance and
the one line. I mean, he was the king of the one-liner.
Exactly. Exactly. And he yeah. I mean, it was in conversation. It was playful. It was playful. It's like, just keep up. Was the sort of the message? Keep up. Can you keep up?
Keep up.
Yeah.
If I put you on the spot, because I see you brought your guitar.
I could never do. I don't think I could.
You are so kind and benevolent.
We know this is really hard.
You know, I learned these songs when I was, gosh, 18 years old. Learned my first John Prine songs when I was 18. But going back and knowing I was coming here, going back and revisiting John's recordings, it was just so much fun. At the first tribute in Nashville, Fiona asked me to do this one, and I was honored. I don't have a tuner, electronic tuner up here, so I'm doing this like I would in the old days, and just tune a lot. The very first original music club I played was a little place in Houston called Anderson Fair Retail Restaurant, not even as big as this room. It held about 75 people packed. It was years before I saw, you know, over 50 people at one of my sets. And a requirement of Anderson Fair was that you had to play your own songs. I mean, you could slip in an occasional great song by somebody else, but you had to really play your own songs. And I didn't have quite enough songs for an entire set, but I found that if I tuned enough.
I know a guy's got a lot to lose. He's a pretty nice fella, kinda confused. He's got muscles in his head and never been used. He thinks he owns half of this town. He starts drinking heavy, gets a big red nose. He beats his old lady with a rubber hose, and he takes her out to dinner and buys her new clothes. That's the way that the world goes round. That's the way that the world goes round. You're up one day, the next you're down. It's a half an inch of water and you think you're gonna drown. That's the way that the world goes round. Sitting in the bathtub, counting my toes when the radiator broke. The water all froze. I was stuck in the ice without my clothes, naked as the eyes of a clown. Well, I was crying, I was used, hoping I'd croak when the sun come through the window. The ice all broke. I stood up and laughed. I thought it was a joke. That's the way that the world goes round. And that's the way that the world goes round. You're up one day, the next you're down. It's a half an inch of water, you think you're gonna drown. That's the way that the world goes round. That's the way that the world goes round. You're up one day, the next you're down. It's a half an inch of water, and you think you're gonna drown. That's the way that the world goes round. That's the way that the world goes round. That's the way that the world goes round.
You wouldn't want to do another one, would you?
Thank you, Holly.
No one should have to live like this.
This was the first song of John's that I learned, and it was the summer of 1976. A high school buddy of mine and I decided that we were going to learn a few songs and try to just get some gigs around town. We were hitting up restaurants, playing their bar while people were waiting for their tables. I mean, we were willing to play anywhere, and I'm not even sure why they let us audition, but we went to it was a disco in suburban Houston, and we auditioned with this John Prine song, and even though we didn't get the gig, I never held it against John. Never.
You know what's really ironic about that? If there was one thing in life that John truly hated, disco. Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, never going there.
Well, it was meant to be then. But I was 18 years old, and really my thought, I mean, when my buddy Bruce and I thought of this song to audition with in a disco, I thought to myself, people in a disco need to hear this song.
When I was a child, my family would travel down to western Kentucky where my parents were born. Back in old town that's often remembered, so many times that my memories are worn. And Daddy, won't you take me back to Muhlenberg County, down by the Green River where paradise lay? Well, I'm sorry, my son, but you're too late in asking. Mr. Peabody's coal train is hauled away. And sometimes we travel right down the Green River to the abandoned old prison down Berry Hill, where the air smelled like snakes and we shoot with our pistol, but empty pop bottles is all we would kill. And Daddy, won't you take me back to Muhlenberg County, down by the Green River where paradise lay? Well, I'm sorry, my son, but you're too late in asking. Mr. Peabody's coal train is hauled away. And now the coal company came with the world's largest shovel, and they tortured the timber and they stripped all the land. And they dug for their coal till the land was forsaken, and they wrote it all down as the progress of man. And Daddy, won't you take me back to Muhlenberg County, down by the Green River where paradise lay? Well, I'm sorry, my son, but you're too late in asking. Mr. Peabody's coal train is hauled away. But when I die, let my ashes float down the Green River. Let my soul float on up to the Rochester Dam. I'll be halfway to heaven with paradise waiting. Just 5 miles away from wherever I am. And Daddy, won't you take me back to Muhlenberg County, down by the Green River where paradise lay. Well, I'm sorry, my son, but you're too late in asking. Mr. Peabody's gold train has hauled it away.
John Prine.
Thank you.
What a privilege to play those songs.
Well, we appreciate you being here and honoring my friend, the great love of your life, and somebody who let you open for him. But he sure loved having you out on the road.
Oh, my goodness. It was...
Right? I think it's safe to say John Prine was a blessing for us all. Whether you knew him or not, you took so much of him into who you were just by listening.
I get the feeling that anyone who's ever listened to John Prine songs knew John Prine. I was thrilled to meet Jack tonight for the first time, and Jack, I lost my dad in 1999, and it felt like the world changed, and one of the things that helped me the most getting through that, and I still do it, was my dad loved to work around our place. When my dad was still living, I helped him way less than I should have around our place, and he was tireless in his interests and things that he loved to do. And after he passed away, I found myself doing his chores for him, and that was, that helped me a great deal. And Jack, that you're helping to run Oh Boy Records, I know your dad would be really proud of you. You folks are wonderful.
Yeah.
Come to a show sometime. It would help me out a lot.
I do want to say, because it's true, is that my boys are every bit as kind as John was. I don't take it for granted. It's amazing to see it. They're kind to me, and I'm mom, just being mom. They're kind to people that they meet.
They're
and
gorgeous.
that means a lot to me, and
That
I know
way.
that would mean a lot to John.
No, I think one of the pieces in the book that was so special, and I had to have it, was Michael McCall's Nashville Scene cover story, where he really dives into how Good Time Charlie has the thing he wants the most, which was a family and little boys and a place to come home to. And you guys...
That was sacred for John. Yeah, that was sacred space.
You guys really raised a hell of a family, and now the business is just more of the same. I mean, it's the family business it was started as on Wilshire Boulevard in LA, but even more so. And it's beautiful to watch, and it's going to be here for a long, long time, right?
Yeah, we have no plans to go anywhere.
So there you go. Thank you all for coming. Is there anything else y'all want to share before we send everybody home?
Well, I'll just repeat. Thank you for being here, and being in a room full of people who are brought together by Fiona and by Jack and Tommy and the memory of John Prine is an awesome feeling, and I thank you folks for including me.
I guess I would say, and I think we talked about this a little earlier, John left us a business to run and, you know, publishing interests. But one of the greatest gifts that he's given us is the community that he created. One person at a time, you know, starting out in the small clubs, moving to bigger clubs, and eventually selling out places like Radio City Music Hall. For him, it was just an extension, really, of those early days. So it was a community. We love John's fans. We're trying to find a different word than fans. Have you ever found a different word than fans? Because it's
Those early club days, you know, if
Yeah.
you, especially places where you play more than one set, you know, you know, you sit down with folks that somebody would offer to buy you a drink or you know, a beer, and you'd sit with them and you'd visit, and you'd get to be friends with them over the years. And it's remarkable to me, all these years later, that, you know, some of those same people are, you know, they're still showing up. And the people that you meet, the people that come to your shows regularly and that you do get to have the privilege of meeting, you know, it is a community. It is like a family.
It is absolutely.
And it's those folks, you know, those folks that make it possible for us.
I mean, John would always recognize, and he never forgot, that it was the people who loved his songs that gave him eventually a lifestyle that he really enjoyed. You know, I mean, it was record by record, show by show. He didn't take anything for granted. He knew who was sitting in front of him, you know, that they had spent hard-earned money, just in the way his father had worked, to buy tickets, buy a T-shirt, buy, you know, just supporting him.
Right.
And, you know, towards the end of his life, he did get to some of those rewards, and he loved it.
Yes, he was
Cadillacs.
good. He was good at that.
But he deserved it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well.
Holly, congratulations on the book, and thank you for putting it
It's
together.
a wonderful book. It is a wonderful book.
How many of these types of events, how hard have you worked to sell this book? Because we want you to work hard.
I've done 10 of these. This is the last big one. I'll do one more in Florida
Nice.
for Christmas. And you know me. Lots and lots and lots of emails, phone calls, interviews, whatever it takes, because I'm annoying.
You keep up your great work, Holly Gleason.
Thank you, Lyle.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll try to keep your interviews shorter next time. All right, well, I know y'all have places to go. Thank you again for being here. I know it's hard to get the book in stores, so I know they have plenty here. If you want books, I'm happy to sign them. Anytime you can read about a LYLE Lovett, because you're a very good copy too, or a John Prine, one of the things that I found reading Jane Scott growing up here, I'm a child of Jane, was you learn a lot about humanity, and you learn a lot about virtues that you want to embrace when you see how people take things like songs and life and braid them together. So the book was a pleasure and an honor to do and to curate, because, and I think most of y'all are old enough to remember the power of getting that morning paper. And when they started to make the change to digital, they didn't always do a great job with morgues. And a lot of what's in this book is getting lost. So part of why I did the book was to make sure all of John was here for the rest of eternity, hopefully, because I think the songs are going to last that long.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Lyle, Fiona, and Holly for being part of such a wonderful incredible evening. And thank you, I agree, Holly, thank you so much for writing this book and paying tribute to such a great artist and a great person. I want to remind you that we have the book signing right outside the theater directly after the event here. If you get time, you can go to the 5th floor. We're open till 9, but you can get up to the 5th floor and check out the exhibit. We'd love you to see that. Up to the 5th and to the back and off to the right, and you'll see John Prine's display. Please, when we thank our guests for the last time, please stay in your seats. We're going to try to get them out of the theater, so hold tight if you can. And again, thank you all for being here. You were a wonderful audience, I agree. And thank you again. Please join me in thanking these great guests.
Thank you so much.